Welcome to the SBI podcast, offering CEOs, sales and marketing leaders ideas to make the number.
Hello, and welcome to SBI's weekly podcast. My name is Matt Shares, and joining me is George Dillis-Reyes. We are with SBI, a sales and marketing consulting firm dedicated to helping you make your number. Today, we have got a great show planned. George and I are going to discuss what we feel is the gold standard in execution that delivers revenue growth. It delivers revenue growth consistently, quarter after quarter, year after year, in a predictable fashion. After having studied the market as part of our 9th annual research project, How to Make Your Number in 2016, we feel like we've been able to boil down how and why 9% of companies are at level 5 on our 5-step revenue growth maturity model. More importantly, we've been able to peek into the operating cadence they deploy, which drives these amazing results. We think you're going to find it absolutely fascinating. First, you might be asking yourself, hey, what qualifies George and Matt to share these findings? I'm going to have George explain our research approach in a way that we believe you can implement a true outward-in capability into your company.
So what you see on the screen is our approach to our research, and we take 4 lenses, Matt. Yep. And the first lens is called the customer lens, and some call this the buyer's view. SBI uses it to understand how buyers buy and how buying behavior is changing from the customer's perspective. It is comprised of current customers and prospect. Last year, SBI collected input from more than 23,000 current buyers, and these are people who recently made complex B2B purchase decisions. We also have more than 9,000 prospective buyers, people who are contemplating making complex B2B purchases, right? And there's a difference between somebody who's bought and somebody who's thinking of buying.
Yeah, makes sense.
And the second lens, Matt, is what we call the corporate lens. Some call this the executive view. SBI uses it to understand what executive teams want from their functional leaders to deliver on the revenue number. And last year, SBI collected input from more than 300 strategies that we analyze, including corporate strategies and individual functional strategies. We studied both good and bad ones and have correlated strategic plans with revenue growth. More than 10,000 documents we reviewed last year, and more than 1,900 metrics that we were benchmarked. More than 900 executives we interviewed. So those are both those 2 lenses.
Yeah. Well, third is the market lens. SBI, we use this lens to understand the external environment in which a sales force operates. So over the past year, we collected input from more than 500 mystery shops, right? Understanding what it's like to be a customer. More than 100 industries that we analyzed, which allowed us to take a look at sort of the macro industry in which a sales force operates. The goal of this is really to understand the current dynamics and how these are likely to change in the future. We took a look at product and solutions, right? Making sure that in the context of how those solutions were being delivered, we could see the different trends. And also taking a look at competitors, right? How do these competitors sell? How do they market? And what's changing? Fourth and final is the field lens. Probably my favorite, because this is where the magic happens. So think about this. We heard from 18,000 salespeople, reps, marketing leaders, product personnel, did over 500 day in the life ofs, which we call a DILO, where you really understand what that selling motion looks like. When
These are ride-alongs, right?
Yeah, you're in direct observation.
In the field, right?
Yep, day in the life of. We spoke to more than 7,800 frontline managers, and we also took a look at test results from over 900 field prototypes. And what a field prototype allows you to do is look at sales and marketing improvement programs, benchmark the before and after results to see what works and what doesn't.
Well, definitely the analysis and depth of the research was exhaustive, Matt. So before diving into how these companies succeeded, with the definition of success being a cost of customer acquisition that is 26% lower and the lifetime value that is 30% higher, let's dig into why this problem exists in the first place. So since 2007, when SBI published its first research report, we've seen a tectonic shift in buyer behavior. Just think of it. The internet alone has forever changed the way a buyer makes a purchase decision. Think about your own purchasing behaviors. Yeah. You know, you got a machine in your hand with an iPhone that you can buy anything you need. You can research anything you want.
No question.
Right?
Yep.
And in 2011, 57% of a buyer's journey was complete before a sales rep even entered the picture.
Yeah.
So people were going out there doing their own studying, their own research, and they didn't even have to or needed or even desired contact with a sales rep.
And it's growing.
Absolutely. So today in 2015, our research shows that trend has gone from 57 to 69%. That's over 2/3 of a buyer's journey complete before even ever interacting with a sales rep.
Yeah.
So what we found is that companies have struggled. They've struggled to keep up with the rapid pace of change. They've responded to this by launching a series of one-off initiatives. But these initiatives were not cohesive or aligned. And what we found is many companies were confusing tactics for strategies. And in last year's research, we found companies were moving to written strategies for each of their functional areas. And this was a good start. In SBI's 2016 research report, we developed the revenue growth maturity model to plot companies in terms of strategic alignment. And as the image shows, there are 5 levels. Let me briefly describe them for you. So level 1, Matt, is when a corporate strategy has been either written or articulated by the CEO, and that's it.
Yeah,
right?
No functional strategies.
No functional strategies exist, and nobody really refers to it. In fact, a lot of the people in the organization don't even know about it, right?
Yep.
So as you can imagine, level 1, revenue growth is not predictable.
Yep.
It's not systematized,
Yep.
et cetera. Level 2 is an improvement, right? You got functional strategies and you got a corporate strategy, and they're usually created at the annual planning process. But the problem with level 2 is that they're created once only. They're not created with the interdependence between the functional leaders, and then they go on a shelf.
And no one uses them.
No one uses them. I'm sure you've seen that many times.
Yep.
Nobody refers to them. It doesn't really drive actions. Nobody's measuring performance against those strategies.
Yeah.
Right? So success in level 2 companies, is squarely on the shoulders of those heroic efforts of a few great sales reps, the CEO, even the head of sales.
Yep.
Level 3, you have functional strategies written, you have corporate strategies written, and each of the functional leaders are actually driving action driven by their strategies down their functional areas. So they're referring to their strategies. But the problem is there's friction because the individual functional leaders aren't talking to each other. There's a lot.
It's getting done in a silo.
It's getting done in a silo. So you got marketing producing leads where sales doesn't really need them.
That never happens.
Never. I never hear that, right? Never heard a sales rep say that, right?
That's right.
You got product being launched and sales is saying, hey, when the hell is it? What, this just came out? I didn't even know about it, right?
Yep.
So that's the problem with level 3. Level 4 is an advancement over level 3, obviously, where you have functional leaders developing the strategies. You got the corporate strategy obviously written, and there's a concerted effort among the functional leaders to be aligned with one another. They're dialoguing, continuously saying, hey, I'm going to do this, and that should impact you here, et cetera, et cetera. So we see that alignment happening, those conversations taking place. Level 5 is level 4 and then some, right?
Yep.
And that then some is all about not only internal alignment, right? It's external alignment to the marketplace. So the functional leaders, the CEO is listening to the marketplace, right? They're doing market research and they're aligning their strategies on a regular basis to the market to see where it's moving. And they can then adjust and go from there.
So George, I guess to the audience, this would be the point as you're sitting there and viewing this through your own lens. We would encourage you to plot yourself first on this revenue growth maturity model. Where is my company? Where am I? Do I have a documented strategy? Do I know my peers' documented strategies? Right? And are we aligned and are we working together and are we listening to the market? So plot yourself. And there's really a couple key reasons why you care. The first is the acquisition cost of a customer. Right? As we've seen, and as you could tell by taking a look at the graphic, as you go from level 1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, across that paradigm, what ends up happening is you lower your acquisition cost. You increase the customer lifetime value at each level you make, but the probability of success. Companies have a 4 times less likely chance of missing the number that are at level 5 than those that are not. And at the end of the day, revenue growth is what everybody is after, but revenue growth is everybody's problem. It's not just a sales problem.
So, Matt, I got a question for you here. So, if I'm a listener and I'm thinking, hey, definitely get it. I want to be aligned. I've listened to you guys go back and forth, and there is merit and there's definitely goodness around being internally and externally aligned. But can you bring to life why that impacts customer acquisition costs and customer lifetime value?
Yeah. Well, I guess in terms of bringing it to life is I would think about it through the new mental model. You've got competitors out there, both do nothing and do it internally, that are competing for those same dollars. As a leader, you have 3 things at your disposal. You can allocate people, money, and time. Allocating any one of those 3 and not getting a return for that allocation is a waste. Acquisition cost goes up, lifetime value goes down. That impacts the health of the company. Many people we know, George, right? They take a job, they have visions of grandeur that there's going to be a big payout, something's going to happen with the stock, maybe we'll get popped by private equity, et cetera, et cetera. For that to materialize, you got to perform consistently at scale, quarter over quarter. Yeah. So I think now would be a good time. Let's take a listen to Bal Dale. And to give the audience some context, Bal is the CEO and chairman of JDA Software, and he caught up with Greg Alexander, our CEO. Let's take a listen to what Bal is doing to drive this strategic alignment, this operating cadence at JDA.
If we say in this given geography, we think there's going to be demand for transportation management systems, warehouse management systems, and workforce management systems. So that's 3 of the solutions that we provide. Well, the professional services folks can say, well, that's great. I can support the transportation management solution and the warehouse management, but I can't support the workforce management, so we're going to need a partner for the workforce management. What the sales leader brings is, okay, in those 3 geographies, I have, first of all, do they agree with that the demand is there or not? Are they hearing from the customers what we found out in the market research? And secondly, they bring along, do I have the resources to be able to do that? So it's not just quota carrying reps, it's pre-sales, it's, do we have folks, pre-sales folks who can speak that language and actually have a background in transportation management or warehouse management and workforce management. And they can bring a knowledge where they say, look, for the workforce management, a customer's not going to agree to buy the solution unless we're providing the services. They won't agree that a partner should do it, right? So it's bringing that sort of on-the-ground intelligence because they're walking the halls of all these customers. Because the market research is great, but at the end of the day, it becomes real at the coalface, which is in the customer and understanding, will the customer buy or not buy? And so having the 3 of them together in this interlock process, and it's iterative, it's not like they just do it once, it's iterative. But what the output of that is we come out and we say, in a given country, these are the solutions we're going to sell, and sales commits to hitting those numbers. And the services group says, and we will provide services to support that, or we will or we'll get partners to support that. And so you get alignment across the 3.
So when you hear Bal describe the interlock process, right, and the way that he talks about all of the functions being in the room, literally, as he described it, to ensure that they're, kind of all on the same sheet of music, it really resonates the importance of this whole concept of strategic alignment, but where you start, your baseline. Don't you think, George?
No, absolutely. I mean, as a CEO, we have to have all of my functional leaders around me, so I need to understand, what are the changes in the marketplace that are going to impact my corporate strategy, but also my functional leaders' strategy, right? Yeah. What's happening in the industry? Yeah. What's happening in my buyers? Have they changed the way they buy? Are they completely resonating with my go-to-market strategy and the way I'm planning on reaching them and interacting with them? Things like that. My competitors. Right? Yep. What's the competitive landscape look like today? What's the share of wallet that some of my competitors have, and what's my strategy? Absolutely, Matt.
So, folks, what we're doing right now is we're walking through, and what George is articulating is when want to get to this agile, this sort of operating cadence that we've seen best-in-class companies who have strategic alignment. It begins with the planning process. And that planning process, like George talked about, and you heard from Val, starts with recognizing the changes that have happened with your market, your accounts, your buyers, your users, how you're performing in your current corporate strategy. Because if you are not, you're deploying tactics masquerading as a strategy. Think about this, George. Has this ever happened in any organization that we know when it comes to planning in Q4? It's an event. Everybody's scurrying around. They don't have any data, so they're creating data where none exists. A good friend of mine once used that term with me.
Yeah.
You are literally, there's a brick wall between you and I. You're marketing, I'm sales. We're writing our strategies.
Complete silos.
I'm not talking to you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Get out of my office.
And I don't want to show you my numbers because God forbid that yours make me look bad and mine make I gotta protect my turf.
Because I'm sales and you're marketing, so I want headcount, you want budget.
Yeah.
So for you to get what you want,
I don't want to give you budget.
That's right.
You don't take the budget out of the budget for marketing, Matt.
That's my point.
Yeah.
So this whole concept of pushing for what you need and trading favors, rolling it up through finance, everybody ends up frustrated. Yeah. The implications of this, George, you end up missing your number. So a way for the folks watching to think and listening to think about this is on page 14 of our annual research report, How to Make Your Number in 2016. We show that 72% of companies operating in either level 1 or level 2. And the probability of making your number at this level is so far less than if you're at level 5. And George, something that was interesting is when we spent some time with Keith Cox from UPS Capital.
I know Keith well.
Yeah, and you know Keith well. Keith and the team at UPS Capital do an incredibly iterative, what I would call market-first based approach to planning as they level set and they continue to operate their cadence. So let's jump in. Let's listen to what Keith has to say. And we'll come back and we'll talk a little bit how you can implement that.
Volatility is all around the speed and dynamics of change in the market today. I think a lot of us always want things to be predictable, have a path, have a certainty of how you're going to go there. But, at the end of the day, like everything you just rattled off, all that has occurred just in the last, I would say in the last, 5 years. You've seen major shifts. And so, that creates volatility. The speed that things have to change for some folks, they see it as volatility. Uncertainty then becomes the lack of predictability, right? So people, don't want to be surprised. The sense of awareness and understanding, their surrounding issues and events. And of course, complexity. I think, as things happen faster, it's going to add to complexity. And and you have multiple forces that are affecting all of this, contributing issues. You have, for me, I always try to take things and put them in real easy terms. And complexity for me is kind of like a big water balloon. You squeeze on one side, and then it just ends up moving to the. You still have the issue. It just landed somewhere else, right? And then. I think ambiguity is the biggest one when you talk about message distortion, and it's, the haziness of what's in front of us, right? You can't see through the fog, and then it allows that message distortion, or what we say misreads, and then becomes mixed meanings of the conditions, and then you have this whole cause and effect confusion that ends up happening.
Yeah. So I got to tell you. If you got from Keith, what I got is that planning and change is an all-the-time thing. It's constant, and you must be in a position to modify. As Keith said, those who can't change, literally, they die. Great companies fall by the wayside because they're stuck. They're not listening to the market, and they're not being iterative.
Great stuff, Matt. Unfortunately, we need to go to a quick break. But stick around, because when we come back, we're going to dive into how you can go about creating a best-in-class operating cadence with examples from some of your peers. You won't want to miss it, so stay tuned.
Making your number is hard. Your problems are complex. Complex problems need complex solutions. Introducing the SBI Magazine, Read in-depth stories written by award-winning journalists about how your peers have overcome their problems to make the numbers. When you need more than a tweet, social post, or blog article, turn to the SBI magazine. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com to subscribe.
Welcome back. I'm Matt Shares, and with me is George Dellis-Reyes from SBI. We're discussing how best-in-class companies maintain an agile operating rhythm to ensure their strategies are driven into the business. Before the break, we were discussing the pitfalls and personal implications on functional leaders when this isn't done correctly. Call this covering the why and the who. Right now, George and I are going to move to the what and the when. So let's start in third quarter. Leading organizations begin by validating their market research, their corporate strategy in Q3. So as George and I talked about before, with this validation, you now seek to understand change in the market, industry and buyer, and also the competitive landscape. You also use this as an opportunity to compare how well your strategy is performing against a set of productivity measures relative to either investor or board expectations. The purpose of this work is to update the baseline and account for emerging trends that will impact the upcoming year. So that's Q3. Now, Q4, this is time for defining the product, marketing, sales, and talent functional strategies. The purpose of these functional strategies is to define how the organization is going to address changes in the marketplace while enabling the company as a whole to achieve its corporate strategy. Once drafted, each strategy is reviewed with the other strategy owners. Sales to marketing, marketing to product. George and I are in the same boat. We're rowing together. What emerges is a priority list of 3 to 5 key integration points. These integration points become the KPIs, the key performance indicators that get measured going forward. Without alignment, the teams will not be working well together. With alignment, a revenue growth plan will be in place that's going to optimize the investments. So when we were talking with Mike Ellis, who's the CEO of ForgeRock, Mike does something really incredible to ensure they're always listening to the market and they're injecting that. Let's have a listen to what he said when he was chatting with Greg Alexander, and then we'll comment on that.
Let's discuss how the functional leaders drive execution, because this is a problem that a lot of our clients are dealing with right now, and I imagine that many that are listening to this podcast. So let's start at the top. So product. So you probably have a CTO or someone who's in charge of product management. How does the leader of the product group drive execution of this strategy and stay in alignment with you?
Yeah, so we do have a CTO, and that CTO and the office of the CTO here is responsible for, let's call it really forward-looking innovation. And what you're asking is a really critical question, because it's where a lot of both young companies and old companies kind of miss the boat. We have done a very good job of creating a connection between that CTO office of innovation and leadership thinking to our head of engineering and all of our engineering organization, as well as our product management organization, about how you create these innovative streams that are also tied closely to what your next generation sprints are around the current engineering and feature sets that you're building out in product, as an example for this year, but also importantly how it's aligned to that innovation thinking coming out of the CTO office about how you create a, let's call it a multi-pronged approach that's tightly interwoven between that next generational view of innovation thinking, coupled with the components and feature sets that you're delivering today in your current products that you're bringing to market. And the ability to create that synergy is kind of the magic. And of course, it comes down to not only a common, well-communicated plan across those teams, but also a tightly interwoven communication process that's a weekly and a daily process, not a monthly process, between those organizations about sharing those plans, sharing the trends and the innovation thinking that's going on, but also importantly on the other side of the house, on the engineering side, also sharing, where and what is being built out and how that's being affected by that innovation. Mm-hmm. Keeping that 360 cycle, if you will, tightly interwoven and, well functioning weekly.
Yeah.
Well, as you can tell, the importance of the connectivity between the three core inputs, product, marketing, and sales, of the go-to-market organization are critical. With companies spending on average 35% of revenue on product marketing and sales, you can't afford to be out of alignment. As you hear Mike explain the healthy back and forth between the key functions, you should be asking yourself, am I doing this now? And if not, what's standing in the way? The single most important thing that comes out of the alignment process when building the strategies is a priority list that Matt mentioned of those 3 to 5 key integration points. And so what are these? Integration points are where the strategies intersect. The integration points become the KPIs that get measured going forward. We call this your hierarchy of objectives. Without alignment, the teams will not be working well together. Matt, why don't you walk the audience through a couple of examples of where we have seen these critical integration points emerge and what companies do with it?
Yeah, thanks, George. So, illustrative purposes, think about this. We saw one client that did this really well where one of their focuses was new logo, assigning new accounts, and the win rate. And they felt like the product organization could have a huge impact. How? Because they were launching a new product to the marketplace. But they took the launch plan that they were building, the launch execution plan, and everything down to the messaging, to the value proposition, to the competitors by market segment, win strategies by market segment, and what they felt available share would be that would define a good year. They use that. So imagine you're looking at a dashboard. I'm the CEO. I just spent a bunch of my R&D on this new product. Product's done their thing, right? They got the product and they put it on the truck.
Yep.
Marketing's doing what they're supposed to do. Now sales has a set of metrics as it relates to new logo win rate. So on my quote, monthly dashboard or stoplight report, new logo win rate relative to new product is a nice connected integration point. Absolutely. And that's driving our strategy.
What I love about it, like you said, marketing, product, sales rally around that key metric, right?
Yeah.
It has an importance to all those 3 functional areas. What's another one, Matt?
Well, we can flip it and go the other way. Let's say that we're going to grow by expanding share inside the install base, right? Oftentimes people think, well, that's all about sales, got to walk the halls, got to do my thing. Well, that's a great integration point with marketing, right? Where we saw a prospect that we spent some time with who said, listen, marketing drives the engine. That was their term. Through the campaigns that they would run into the install base, the unpenetrated buying centers, where they had not generated any revenue, how they would run a campaign into those key buyers, generate demand, and then deploy what they call a subject matter expert to go and speak to one of the new offerings that could solve a typical problem that type of buyer would have. But they did this because they had super contextual content, something that was so specific to that account. The way that buyer reviewed it and read it, they're like, oh my goodness, these people know our problems. Great integration point between marketing and sales. CEO looking at his dashboard going, how are we doing in share of wallet? Well, day after day, week after week, when I'm doing these things, I've got my teams aligned. So that's another example.
Yeah, I'm just thinking when you're talking share of wallet, it just reminds me about, how about account-based marketing, right? And how marketing has got to be, in lockstep with sales, right? If we're going to grow share of wallet, how am I, developing my account plan?
Correct.
Right? And how am I leveraging marketing to campaign, to sell when I'm not there?
Correct.
Right? To be the tip of the spear for me. Great stuff.
So, it's funny, George, on that point, and for our viewers, I think you would appreciate this. We caught up with Chris Giglio from Aderant, and Chris is the CEO. And what Chris did is he spoke to Greg Alexander about how he drives a single pane of glass, this view through which all of his functional leaders would be aligned to making sure that they can walk in each other's shoes. Let's have a listen.
We changed our sales leader about a year ago, and during that transition, I gave this topic a lot of thought, really how do I generate a great alignment and great relationships with our sales leader as we contemplated who to add to the role, and then how do we construct a team around them that supports the sales leader. Transparency is really important in the formation of trust, understanding why things are the way they are, and kind of agreeing on what can be done differently was the basis really for how we went about our evaluation and selection of the new sales leader. So, and I spent a quarter as the active sales leader myself, so I had a much greater appreciation for the challenges in the organization. So, I think the advice that I would give, really, and it goes to any relationship I have, is complete transparency and clear expectation setting and expectation management as things evolve over time. And that's how I'll give you more color if it's interesting how our relationship has evolved, and I think it's actually fairly strong today.
So, as you could tell, here's Chris as a CEO, putting himself out in the field, going on sales calls, getting an appreciation for what a sales leader deals with, encouraging his product leader to work with the person leading the services organization to, quote, walk in his shoes. So when you do things like that, and you continue to drive that type of approach, that sort of operating cadence is what drives strategic alignment. So it's time for another short commercial break, but don't go anywhere. When George and I come back, we're going to talk about the last couple of steps and how you can drive strategic alignment where you work.
Each day, you receive hundreds of emails, tons of text messages, countless telephone calls, and sit in too many meetings. How do you find ideas to make the number with all this noise? The SBI blog filters all this nonsense for you and presents only first-rate ideas to make the number. Simplify your life. Subscribe to one blog and read the best content. Go to salesbenchmarkindex.com and subscribe today.
Welcome back. I'm George De Los Reyes, and with me is Matt Shears, and this is the SBI Weekly Podcast. Before the break, we were discussing the importance of the operating rhythm, the cadence we have seen from best-in-class companies, and how they ensure their strategies are driven throughout the organization. In this last section, we're going to discuss the how you would maintain this best-in-class pace. And the how is the most important. In the previous segment, we referred to this as the hierarchy of objectives. The hierarchy of objectives is the scorecard you use, which moves from corporate to product to marketing to sales and finally to talent. There is a connectivity between the key items you call out and, most importantly, the integration points that exist from end to end on the items. To illustrate, Matt and I are going to walk you through an example. Let's start with the weekly functional alignment calls. So on a weekly basis, functional leaders, product, marketing, sales, and talent meet one-on-one to look for areas of misalignment. And the agenda for the call looks something like this. You have several things you want to attack. First, you want to review the status of action items from the previous week.
So right? What I owed you and
what you owed me. The second thing you want to do in your weekly cadence calls is you want to discuss execution issues from each strategy. See what's working, what's not. So if I'm in marketing and I'm launching these campaigns inside the customer base to try to stimulate some demand in adjacent buying centers, I want to talk about, hey, is it working? Is it not working? I want sales to give me some feedback. I want to give that feedback to the product to make sure the messaging is resonating, right?
Well, I think the other thing, George, is on a weekly basis, you got to share new market intelligence with your peers, right? And the implications of this, and then you're probably setting action items for the upcoming week.
Absolutely.
Right? What am I going to do? What are you going to do on 3 Hike? So I think on that note, we found something pretty interesting. So Brian Walker, who is the CEO of Herman Miller, describes how he and his team in a $2.5 billion company use a single-page strategic plan and the corresponding scorecard to drive alignment across all of his functions. Let's have a listen on what Brian had to say.
One of the things we've developed over time is this belief that you can have a lot of details to your strategy, but ultimately you have to be able to get it down to one page. Mm-hmm. And so I'm sort of relentless now that every time somebody brings me a strategy, whether it's for a business unit, whether it's for a product line, whether it's entering a new market, you have to be able to get that down to one page. And on that one page, you got to tell me what are the major changes you have to make. You have to have a good understanding of what is the situation analysis, i.e. what are the drivers of the marketplace, what are the risks that you face to do that, what are your key goals and objectives, what are the talent you need to do it, and what are the key priorities to get it done, and then what are the investments you need. And I think if you could keep those elements in front of you, and if you force yourself through the discipline of having to get it to one page, you get clearer and clearer in your own ability to be articulate about it.
So, George, as you can see, I mean, here's Brian and a company like Herman Miller driving this process.
From the CEO's seat. That's amazing.
And the trigger event that got him to do that was recognizing things were changing in the market and they had to speed up. Now, we talk about weekly, let's talk a little bit about monthly, right? And this whole concept of getting into this monthly rhythm where you've got a chance to review the KPIs, right, as a team, but ensure the organization as a whole is on pace to achieve the objectives. So, George, what would be a few things that we would talk about, on a monthly type alignment call?
So first of all, you want to absolutely review progress against each strategy's objectives and the KPIs that summarize how we're aligning. And usually you use we've seen like a stoplight chart.
Yeah.
So if you got my 3 to 5 integration points, right? I'm going to use a stoplight report to kind of tell me, hey, are we aligned? Are we misaligned?
Like green,
yellow, red. Very simple. It makes it easy for everybody to understand. Everybody's on the same page. Green, hey, we're doing well.
Yeah.
Yellow, we got to look at. Red, major misalignment. What's going on? Do we need to go back and reevaluate, et cetera?
So,
right?
and actions are taken at that moment.
Absolutely.
On the red items.
Yeah.
So every 30 days, I'm going to be attacking a problem.
Yeah, and what's great about that is you're constantly keeping track of these areas of misalignment, so they're not springing up on you. At the QBR, or worse still, at your annual planning process when it's too late to react to them. Right?
Yeah. Okay.
So another big thing you want to do on these monthly meetings is you want to share the market intelligence that the sales team is hearing, that the marketing is getting back from maybe your customer surveys or win-loss interviews or things like that. You want to get that intel and you want to assess it. You want to understand what are the implications on our strategy, right? And think about and consider some adjustments, right? And the output of these monthly meetings is really working on 1 or 2 big issues that threaten alignment or execution.
Okay.
You don't want to boil the ocean.
Yep.
You just want to focus, hey, what are these top 1 or 2 things that I got to do going in the next month? Let's go to work.
Series of 30-day sprints. So then, George, I guess the last piece is as you cascade and you think about moving out of the month into the quarter, and we're doing this in the context of, Q3, we listened to the market, looked at changes. Q4, we built our functional plans. We've got this operating rhythm. Well, the year has now started. Yep. So the quarterly business review process, which isn't new to most people, right? People have QBRs. But I think the way you have the QBR and what happens in the QBR is something we've seen with level 5 companies. For example, the QBR is a way to review strategic assumptions, determined if they played out, and then reallocate people, money, and time based on those assumptions, literally in the moment. So you think about it, end of March, early April, we're making a change because we ran a set of campaigns into a market. We did not generate the leads we thought. We had an assumption, and we're going to make a pivot, George.
So what I love about the added flavor to the QBR is that we're layering in that discussion around alignment, right?
Yeah.
Where oftentimes it doesn't happen. It's all about, the financial, status of the organization. We're not talking about alignment. And this forces the issue of alignment to be inserted into the QBR process. And as you mentioned, this is where we can make those real-time adjustments like you described at the QBR. So we're not waiting till the end of the year, right, to react to the changes in the marketplace. We're capturing it and we're actually inserting it and we're reacting to it in real time. Great stuff.
George, it's interesting. I think the symbolism, the message that it sends to the employees is that when you're meeting every 90 days as a functional leadership team driven by the CEO, you're reacting to the market. I mean, imagine being a sales rep in Kansas City and you get an email that says the company just met, we've reviewed the strategies, and we're reallocating budget to go do this and this. We're going to stop doing this and this. We're going to keep doing this and this. Like, your level of confidence in who you went to work for is incredible. Because remember, as a leader, you got two markets. You got the external market, no doubt. You have an internal market called employees that if you're not constantly showing them that you're paying attention, they have other choices. They don't have to work for you. And I think that's the beauty of the QBR.
One thing on that is it's, I love the idea of not only, at the executive level, because that's what happens in the QBR, you have your executives meeting and they're driving alignment, discussing alignment, they're reacting to the marketplace, right? But then they're broadcasting it, right, as you mentioned, to the organization.
Yep.
So this ensures that, to your point, not only are the executive teams aligned, but everybody in the organization is aligned.
Yeah.
Because at the QBR, we're saying, hey, we heard this in the marketplace. We're going to make some adjustments to our people, our money, and our time, where we're allocating our resources. Total buy-in from the entire organization on, hey, our executive team is really driving this this theme of alignment down through every functional area. Love it.
Yeah, the days of doing strategy behind the steel curtain and only 10 people get to see it. And
the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah, that's right. It's magical. Those are
magical,
gone.
right?
So
exactly.
On that topic, Greg Alexander, SBI CEO, caught up with Fred Florjanic, who is the chairman of Ramsey Industries, and Fred was also the former CEO of two multi-billion-dollar companies. So you talk about somebody having a perspective on what it takes to be successful. Fred, in this following clip, he describes the best practices and the cadence on what he feels is a best-in-class process. Let's have a listen.
How have you driven alignment across functions?
I hearken back to my CEO days at Safety Clean, and you raise a very interesting day-to-day dilemma for any particular senior management team, and in particular the CEO, because there's conflicting priorities depending upon who you talk to, and that's one of the reasons why I would have absolutely mandatory weekly senior staff meetings.
Weekly?
Weekly. Monday mornings. Actually, it started at around 10 in the morning and would go through till about 2 in the afternoon to do exactly that, to get on the same page. Because if the marketing guy has his own particular agenda and he doesn't report to the sales guy, the sales team has its priority. The IT people have their issues. HR has its issues. There's training requirements, et cetera. The operational manufacturing guys have competing issues, and everybody wants the limited amount of capital and or financial resources or even people resources.
Yep.
And so a CEO is constantly playing referee or adjudicating, where the money gets spent, where the people and priorities get applied.
Well, as you can tell, somebody like Fred, with the years of experience, the successes he's had in public, private companies, incredible, what he sees and his vantage point on how to drive true strategic alignment. So, George, unfortunately, we're out of time.
It goes by quickly, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. It does. So, I would like to thank you, our audience, for tuning in. If you enjoyed this show, I suggest you subscribe to SBI TV at salesbenchmarkindex.com/TV. Or you can find us at our SBI YouTube channel. We have some outstanding guests confirmed for future episodes that you will not want to miss. Until then, George and I wish you the best of luck as you try and make your number.
This has been the SBI Podcast. For more information on SBI services, case studies, the SBI team and how we work, or to subscribe to our other offerings, please visit us at salesbenchmarkindex.com.